When a group of spelunkers set out on a summer morning in 1976 in northern Spain, they had no idea what they were about to discover several hours later. Acting on a tip from fellow cavers about bare bones in a remote pit, the team trekked roughly 700 meters horizontally through the darkness of the Atapuerca Mountains. At the end of the passage, they found something intriguing, a vertical shaft plunging 13 meters straight down. When they descended and their headlamps swept the floor, they didn't find a bear's grave. They found something more chilling, a pile of human bones. And this marked the beginning of the systematic excavation of Sima de los Huesos, the pit of bones. The site is dated to approximately 430,000 years old. The remains found belong not to modern humans, but to early Neanderthals and their relatives. The pit has yielded over 6,700 fossil fragments from at least 28 individuals. And even now, more than 40 years later, the pieces are still being put back together. 6 years after the initial discovery, archaeologists began reconstructing a skull that would later be named Cranium 17. Over the next 2 decades, as more fragments were meticulously fitted into place, something deeply unsettling emerged. Above the left eye socket, the smooth curve of bone was violently interrupted. 2 distinct holes stared back at the researchers, a punctuation mark of violence written in bone. It would take another 30 years before anyone could prove what this damage truly meant. In 2015, a team led by paleoanthropologist Dr. Naomi Sala published a shocking, peer-reviewed conclusion. Whoever Cranium 17 belonged to was murdered. But how do you prove a homicide from a skull that has been buried for nearly 500,000 years? First, the pattern of injury. These are 2 distinct, overlapping fractures located next to each other, just above the left eye. Accidents typically result in a single impact, usually to the side or back of the skull during a fall. 2 repeated strikes to the exact same frontal area suggest something far more sinister, a deliberate, intentional attack. Second, the forensic imaging. Using modern CT scans, researchers analyzed the internal bone structure and found something conclusive. Both fractures were caused by the same object, delivered from the same angle. The attacker was standing directly in front of the victim. And because the wounds are above the left eye, the attacker was almost certainly right-handed, swinging down with force. But what if the damage happened long after death? The analysis showed 0 signs of healing. More importantly, the fracture edges display the telltale characteristics of living bone. Fresh, living bone splinters and bends like green wood. Dry, dead bone shatters like brittle glass. Cranium 17 was alive when these blows landed. Third, the weapon. Inside the same pit, archaeologists discovered a single, stunningly crafted hand axe made of purple quartzite. A stone so rare and beautiful, it has been called Excalibur. While Excalibur itself doesn't match the specific trauma marks, the shape of bifacial edge of a typical Chilean hand axe aligns precisely with the impact notches on Cranium 17's skull. One might suspect ritual sacrifice, but the forensic analysis found no evidence of cut marks or defleshing associated with ritual killing. The scenario that best fits the evidence is grim. This person was killed in a violent interpersonal confrontation, perhaps elsewhere in the landscape. Yet, instead of being left to scavengers, their body was carried to the pit and deliberately deposited inside by community members. That makes Sima de los Huesos not just the scene of the oldest confirmed murder in the fossil record, but something far more poignant, one of the earliest signs of funerary behavior. The world's oldest cemetery. And yet one mystery remains unsolved. Because the pelvic fragments in the pit are commingled and cannot be definitively matched to Cranium 17, we do not know the sex of this individual. The only other certainty, gleaned from the teeth examination, is that this victim of humanity's oldest cold case was young, somewhere between 20 and 30 years old.